Welcome back to the Movie MP, folks, the vlog where I review movies and give you the hidden information within these films to help you better your life. I'm your host, Dr. Rob Dickinson, and tonight we are going to review Lee Cronin's The Mummy and analyze it through the lens of Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, MD's The Body Keeps the Score. My prescription tonight, folks, is run, don't walk to go see Lee Cronin's The Mummy. This is one of the best movies I've seen in quite some time. I would give it a 10 out of 10. I was really impressed by this film, and I hope you will be too. But give you the basics. It is rated R. It runs for 2 hours and 14 minutes. It has an IMDb rating of 6.5 out of 10, which I wholeheartedly do not agree with, and a Rotten Tomatoes rating of only 45%. I don't know what we're doing here, folks. I don't know who these critics are, but I hope you agree with me when you see this film that this is one of the best films of the year. It is written and directed by Lee Cronin, and it stars Natalie Grace, Jack Renner, and Leah Costa. So in Mummy, in terms of looking at through the lens of The Body Meets a Score, the mummy is not just a monster, but it is the unprocessed trauma that is wrapped up and returned to the family. So I'm going to change my format a bit, folks. Rather than give you a boring review of a film, I didn't amass a student loan bigger than Titanic to do that. There's plenty of people out there that are doing that and doing it much better than I. What I'm here to do is I want to give you the information that we can derive from this film that's going to better your life. So let's just jump right into looking at The Mummy through the lens of The Body Keeps the Score. So pulling the camera lens back on this film and taking a look about what it's really about, it's about trauma. The mummy in the film is not just a monster. It is the unprocessed trauma that is wrapped up and returned to the family. So one of the things I really liked about this film was the writing, especially at the very beginning. We see the family interacting, and I just thought that the writing was really great. It's very realistic. It's kind of the type of interaction that I would have with my family, and you don't typically see that in a lot of movies today. It seems to be very whitewashed or very scripted, but this seemed really realistic to me. So I'm going to give you the 7 lessons that I've derived from this film through the lens of The Body Keeps the Score. So lesson number 1 is that the illusion is a trap. Do not confuse what you want to be true with what is true. We see this in the film when the family readily accepts their daughter back without questioning any of these odd and strange behaviors. The lesson here is to be careful because emotions can often blind us to the reality of things, particularly when there's loss involved. So the key here, as I've often stated in other reviews, is question everything. And here's an excellent quote to illustrate this. We want to see the world not as it is, but as we are. Anais Nin. Lesson 2 here is trauma never stays buried. So we see this play out in the film where the daughter's condition begins to worsen both behaviorally and physically, but all these warning signs are completely ignored by the family, especially the mother, where she just wants to just explain everything away and double down on what she's doing for the child. So the lesson here is confronting the demon is the only way to contain it and to deal with it. The more you avoid it, the bigger the problem will become. Now, I've talked about this before in some of my other reviews. If you think about a box and you're taking your emotions and you're shoving it down in that box, and you just keep on shoving, and you shove the trauma down, and you shove all your emotions down in there, all those negative emotions, eventually that box is just going to explode. And this is what happens if we avoid the trauma and we don't deal with it. So the best thing to do is acknowledge the trauma, acknowledge it happened, seek out a professional that can help you through the trauma and to deal with it. And here's an excellent quote by Carl Jung: "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life." Lesson number 3 is trust the subtle signals. Trust your intuition. Often that gut feeling, they call the gut is the second brain. And the reason for this, and actually the reason why SSRIs, the number one side effect is often GI issues, is because we have a lot of serotonin receptors, dopamine receptors. We have all those not only in our brain, but we also have them in our gut, our intestine, our stomach. So it truly is a second brain to us. So when we get a gut feeling, it's best to go with that gut feeling. In the film, what we see where there's these subtle changes to the other characters, not just the main character, but the other characters in the film. And these are just either simply ignored or they're explained away. And eventually this comes back as a bigger whole that ends up becoming a much larger problem later on. So again, remember, intuition is a pattern recognition process. It's a very subtle pattern recognition process. It's not paranoia, it's nothing weird, and it's certainly nothing that should be ignored. And here's a quote here to illustrate this: "The intuitive mind is a sacred gift," by none other than Albert Einstein. Lesson number 4 here is that your identity or our loved one's identity can fracture under pressure. And the movie moment here is what we see is that there is a underlying personality that begins to emerge from the main character, the daughter. And again, it's basically goes ignored by everyone in the film until it becomes a much larger problem. So in the film, the family continues to cling to the old identity of their daughter, and this prevents them from facing the reality of the matter that this is not the same person that it was before. So the key here is to remain flexible on how you define people, and this includes yourself. And here's another excellent quote that I've brought up time and time again, and it continues to resurface. It is not the strongest who survive, but the most adaptable. Charles Darwin. Lesson number 5 here is love without boundaries becomes very dangerous. In the film here, what we see is that the family tolerates all these bizarre behaviors and odd happenings because simply they love their daughter and they want her back. But what they don't realize is not only are they putting her in greater danger, but they're putting themselves in danger. And quite frankly, we find out that the entire civilization and the world is in danger here. So what is the key to this? The key is that healthy love includes limits, not just acceptance. And unfortunately, I see this firsthand often in the substance abuse world, and that unconditional love just creates greater harm, not only to the individual, but usually to the person that's supporting them or the family. And here's how this happens. One, we enable our loved ones and they fall into further and further destructive patterns or further and further addictive behaviors. Or two, unfortunately, there are a lot of predatory organizations out there that once the insurance money dries up or insurance refuse to continue to pay for more rehab, they of course turn to the family and say, well, but this is your loved one. With $20,000, well, we've got this new treatment that we're going to fix them. And unfortunately for some families, they buy into that. They hand over the credit cards. They hand over their life savings, their retirement accounts. They take out double mortgages on their homes to help their loved one. And I understand that, but at the end of the day, that unconditional love actually cause more harm. So healthy love and healthy relationships must have boundaries and must have limits. That's all there is to it. And here's an excellent quote that illustrates this. Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. Prentice Hemphill. Lesson number 6 here is that grief must be processed. It cannot be ignored, it cannot be erased, and it cannot be replaced. We see this in the family where the family rushes to bring the daughter back into their home. I was like shocked when the hospital discharges the daughter back to them. I think I've worked for some of those hospitals because I don't know how this person met criteria for discharge, but apparently she did. And the family was more than happy to bring her back without considering that this individual is in need of significant professional help that they cannot provide at home. So the key here is rushing to undo all this or undo the grief usually just makes it worse. I'm a certified hypnotist and I use hypnosis in my practice. And people often tell me, why can't we just kind of erase the memory through hypnosis? And maybe that's possible. I don't know. I think there was a movie about erasing memories and the risks of doing so. But you don't want to do that because, again, you can't just erase it. You can't forget it. It happened. So it has to be processed. And the only way to do that is through the help of a counselor. And there are some wonderful modalities out there, therapy modalities, including hypnotherapy and EMDR, which actually helps the individual work through the trauma. And once they get through the other side, they're better for it. And medications, they just act as a tool to help individuals get to the point where they can face and process that trauma, because it is going to be hard. It is going to be painful to do it. But again, as they say, no pain, no gain. And once we process all that grief and trauma properly, we come through on the other side as a better person, and hopefully we've learned something in the process. And here's a quote from Queen Elizabeth II that states, "Grief is the price we pay for love." And lesson number 7 here is that reality always wins. So in the movie, towards the end of the film, the family finally has to face facts and face the reality of the situation, that this is not their daughter anymore. And they have to do something about it, or the whole world is going to be undone. The longer the family has delayed its acceptance, the worse things have gotten and the harder it is to correct it. And if they would have recognized things earlier, we would not have suffered some of the consequences that we saw in the film. For example, spoiler alert, grandma dying is a great example of that. So facing truth early and addressing it is always easier and cheaper than denying it. And this is true even in personal finance and the business world, that due to the future value of the dollar, it is always cheaper to do something now than it is later. So the final take tonight, folks, is that the grief and trauma that we refuse to process only comes back later to control us. And this is true with trauma, grief, relationships, leadership, and of course, business decisions. Dr. van der Kolk emphasizes that healing requires integration, not denial. So the tragedy in this film, just like trauma, is that the family ignored the fact that this was no longer their child and did not take action early, which allowed the horrors to just continue to escalate and escalate. Dr. van der Kolk suggests that to begin healing, you have to name the experience, reconnect the body and the mind, and to face the reality early and address it rather than deny it. And the best way to do all this is to seek out a professional therapist or counselor that can help you with dealing with the trauma and the grief through techniques such as traditional talk therapy, CBT, DBT, hypnotherapy, EMDR. There is a plentitude of modalities out there that can help you. And I know I hear it all the time. Well, therapy didn't work for me, or I didn't like my therapist. Well, therapists are like underwear. You have to try a lot of them on until you find the pair that you like. Unfortunately, this is a painstaking process to find a therapist that you click with, but I encourage you to do so. It might take 2 therapists, it might take going through 4 therapists, but eventually you will find a therapist that you click with that can help you effectively heal and get through the trauma and grief. Well, kids, that's it for tonight. I hope you liked tonight's review. Hope you got something from it, and I hope you learned something that will help you. And as always, my prescription is go see Lee Cronin's The Mummy, apply 2 of these life lessons, and call me in the morning. Press like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Have a good night.